Oh, this is different than I thought. Because, two reasons. This is like my fourth story at Story Project, but this is my first story post brain injury, so there might be pauses where I'm like, what was I going to say? Shoot. Most of my stories have been about something kind of chipper or happy. This story is about loneliness, because that's comfortable for all of us, right? But then there's some intimacy, not physical intimacy, don't get your hopes up. There's some emotional intimacy and community at the end, so I think that we'll get through this okay. When I was 15, and I might have included this anecdote in another story, I literally don't remember. But when I was 15 or 16 years old, I lived with my dad, and he would leave all the time for long periods of time, sometimes short periods of time, sometimes like a month or two here and there. And I would come home and there'd be a note on the table like, hey, water's turned off. I met squirrels. Call somebody. And sometimes there'd be like cash there to pay the water bill, for example, or just to help me for a few weeks get through this. Guys, it feels really sad right now sharing this with you. I'm sorry. It'll be better, okay? So thank you. One of these times, I get this note. I walk over to my mom's house, and she lived like 2 blocks away. So I walk over to my mom's house, and I knocked on the back door, and my stepdad answered, and I said, I wasn't allowed to go to her house like for long periods of time. I wasn't allowed to stay there. It gets better, okay? So you guys know. I feel very responsible for your feelings right now, and I'm sorry about that. But So I go to my mom's house and I knock on the door and my stepdad answers and I said, Gary, I told him what was going on and I said, so can I come in for like a glass of water, use the phone, figure out what I'm going to do for the night? And he, standing there with the door open, goes, that's not my problem, and shuts it. And I'm pretty sure I had just turned 16. And although I was a very little girl, I just turned 16. So I was like, I'm going to do this, Gary. I'm going to overcome this obstacle because I hate your guts. I felt so grown and like so much tougher than the world. Like really it was that moment, he shut the door and I was like, this just proves I'm a badass, Sorry for the cuss word. But I was just like, this just proves I'm tough. And I'm going to, I thought I was like a UFC wrestler. Is that what they're called? Yeah, I thought it was like an ultimate fighting champion wrestler. Like I was like, I've beat people up, Gary. And so, that was, I was on the back porch and I was thinking about this in September because I was, my bosses had confronted me about my brain injury and the fact that I wasn't normal, maybe, or doing things like I used to, or able to focus, or remember things, or like walk for a long time without getting dizzy. And so I'd left work and was trying to get treatment, and I'm recently divorced and had just moved and, so I'm lying in bed, and I was just like, I kept thinking of that moment on the porch, like, what did I do? Like I couldn't remember, and I still can't remember what I did next. I used to know that, but I don't anymore. So I was like, I remember I was on the back porch, and then what happened? Like, what was my next step? Because maybe, in that moment, I can find some sense of resilience to figure out what I'm going to do now. And then I was like, I remember I thought it was really tough, and then I was like, that's because I was stupid. And then I was like, I was so vulnerable. I was, 16-year-old little girls are very much little girls, and I was like, I was pretty vulnerable, like to anybody who had a glass of water or a meal or a jacket or a place to stay when it gets dark out. I'm not that stupid anymore. And I was like, I'm kind of stupid because of the brain injury, but not in that way. And I wish I had some of that back, because then maybe I would feel like, I'm a UFC champion, Gary. I'm going to overcome this because I hate your guts. I don't even hate my stepdad anymore. So I was like, what do I do? I don't have that. I got nothing. And then I remembered my community where I was raised. I was really fortunate to be in a city. There's infrastructure and resources and people who therefore had some sense of internal resilience and could provide me some companionship. And I thought of when I was later on that year, my junior year, I became best friends with this girl, Tara Bauska, and I'd go to her house all the time, and they were an Italian family, and she, her older brother lived there, and still he was like 22 and worked at Ford and still lived in his little bedroom with a twin-size bed, and it was very darling. He had a Misfit sticker on his window. And his their mom was Italian. She'd always wring her hand when she talked. She'd be like, Tara, can you just pick up your towel? And like Tara would be on the phone. She'd be like, leave me alone, Mama. So there was just family, and they were loud. And that was really important to me. I mean, I had grown up, until I was 14, I'd lived with my sisters. And when you have siblings, there's always somebody to argue with. Like, even if you're getting stabbed in the stomach by your little sister's heel and it feels like blaze, you're like, oh my God, it's companionship. And we would, ups and downs. But we would play rummy, and there were always, like, someone always had a friend over, so there were usually not just 3 girls, but 4 or 5 of us. And on summer nights, we would walk outside and we would lay in the street and look up at the stars together, because nobody was going down Baker Street past 9 o'clock at night. And you just had each other, and we would dance in the dark all the time. Like, just something, I just always had someone to do something with. And I loved to dance because my mom really liked that I could dance. I was her favorite salsa dancer. I was her favorite salsa partner of my sisters. And, I looked like my dad. She hated that about me. I laughed like my dad. She hated that about me. And sometimes I'd get excited talking, and I would start to do this thing with my leg. And she would go, you sound just like your father. I hate that about you. So that I could salsa dance was really, a good thing. And it was something I did with my sisters. But so I was thinking about all this stuff, and I'm ruminating about it in September, and I remembered the Bauskas, and I remembered, being with Tara's family and how it was comforting, like my siblings. And I'd wanted to marry her older brother, Chris, and my plan was that I would go away to college. I would spend my 20s in Europe, gallivanting and dating all of the European men, like all of them. And then I would come back to Crown Point, Indiana, and I'd marry Chris when I was 30 and he was 35. And I told him this all the time. I was like, Chris, 30 and 35, baby, right here. And he hated this so much. I think that there was like an argument about it. I know there wasn't, Tara told me one time there was an argument about it at dinner that ended with Chris going, shut up, I'm not marrying Francis. And he slams his table under the bed, slams his chair into the kitchen table and storms upstairs. But he loved me. Don't let that fool you. He loved me. And I'm not just saying that because I'm being clouded by my 16-year-old infatuation, or my infatuation as a 16-year-old as I remember it. When I went away to college, when I did go away to college, Chris had this conversation. He was like, I need to talk to you about college. And I thought he was going to talk to me about being responsible. I mean, I found myself in Wisconsin a few times, just like, shoot, I went to a party on Saturday in Chicago, now it's Tuesday, and I'm in Wisconsin, because I had no rules and no parental guidance. So I thought that was going to be the conversation. Like, when you're in college, you've got to, stay there in your dorm. That's what I was waiting for. No, instead he was like, in college, you're going to have to take showers in the dorms, and they're in stalls. And you're going to have to eat cafeteria food. And they'll give it to you, and it's like this big spoonful of glop, and you're like spooning up your glop, and you look, and it's like 3,000 calories for that glop. And you're going to gain like 20 pounds. And he was like, there is no love there, Francis. There is no love there. Nana's not there making a gnocchi. There's no mastacholi. This is love. This is love. And I was like, are you serious? That's what you're telling me right now? I remember I laughed and was just like, you're ridiculous. But I also remembered, so I'm depressed. It's September, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do about my brain and work and things and being a mom and being recently divorced. I mean, it's lonely. And I thought about Chris Bauska. I thought about my friend Jenny, who one time she was staying the night at my house. I don't remember what transpired to all of a sudden from Jenny staying the night at my house to my dad coming home, and he was yelling at me in the corner of my bedroom. And I was literally cornered. And I kept looking at the window and looking at Jenny in the doorway. And Jenny, she's 15, 16-year-old little girlfriend, was standing there like this in the doorway. And my dad, every once in a while, would turn around and go, you need to get your ass home, Jenny. Get home. Call your mom now or walk home. And then he'd turn around and keep yelling at me. And Jenny was standing in the doorway, and she would look at me every time he turned around. She'd go, I'm not leaving you alone. I'm not leaving you alone. Because she was 16, she thought she was a UFC champion fighter. And I remember, literally at one point during this conversation, or during this situation, she even told my dad, what are you going to do, hit me? It was just phenomenal, the boldness and bravery that we no longer have, that we're not 16. So I thought of that, and I also thought of and how loved I was by, that community I had there. But I thought of us, here in the city. And there was this time this summer I was running in the woods. It was like I'd gone out at 6 and Red Rock Open Space was closed. So I was running along Palmer Trail right behind Red Rock Open Space. And it started to get dark. And I couldn't remember where my car, I remembered where my car was. It was parked off Gold Camp Road, but I couldn't remember how to get back. And I stopped being able to see because my brain injury is I have memory lapses, I get tremors, I'm dizzy, and sometimes my vision, a lot of it's vision related. Sometimes vision just gets fuzzy in all those fractals of the foliage, and I was just really getting nervous, and I kept circling around this area, and there was a dead deer carcass there. And so I was this is the part where I die. And I called my friend Carrie. My friend Carrie is the patron saint of the recently divorced. I think that they are canonizing that with our new liberal pope. And I was I called her and I was hey, I don't know how to get back to my car, but I can get to Crystal Park Road from here. And I called my friend Tim, and I thought he could help walk me back to my car, kind of, because he's the one that had showed me that trail before. And he couldn't figure it out. Right when we were talking about it, the phone dies. And I was okay, now is the part where the bear and the mountain lion and the bobcat are all combining their wits to hunt me. And it was dark. It was pitch black, as dark as it is now, but there's no streetlights. It's the woods. And there were times I was crawling on the ground so I could know where the trail was, because it was tree-ish or something. And, certain moments I was literally just crawling and crying, and I would feel a drop of sweat, and I was that's that tiger's tooth, drooling right over me. And I ran to Crystal Park Road, and I get to Manitou, and I was I'll charge my phone, tavern. And I'm running, and I was super excited, and all of a sudden this truck pulls up, and I hear, get in the freaking car. And it was my friend, the patron saint of the recently divorced, and I was I love you. And I was in such good spirits because they had just saved my life. And I remember it was her and Tim Gore and our other friend Tim, and they drove me back to where my car was parked, and everything was miraculous and beautiful. And I remembered also all of the people that know that I have a brain injury. I love this, is that I would go somewhere and just walking down the street. How are you? That purposeful, how are you? And I was I live in a good place, and I really wanted in September to have a home to go back to in Indiana, to be to walk in somewhere and my mom to be baking cookies and turn around you're here, and drop the cookies and rush over to me. But my mom grew up in the Bronx, and she's not like that. So she was Puerto Rican in the Bronx. She wasn't Jewish. It was a different thing. So thank you. During that time in September, I really wanted that. And of course, that wasn't an opportunity for me. But I thought of patron saint of the recently divorced. I had lunch today with John Weiss. He's kind of a big deal. I'm, connected. But I felt that. I felt the comfort of the love from my community. And I was reminded super of that, and how I'd stayed at her house, and all the friends I'd had, and how I was saved in the woods. And I felt our community come together, and I felt that comfort. And I thought it's kind of, we have some of the same resources. There's good infrastructure here, et cetera. And if you think of I was thinking the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that top level for community, not just a person, but would be the ability to some of us have some internal resilience and could provide others of us some companionship. And we have that, and that's rich here. And so my mom, a couple weeks ago, was do you want to go? I'll get you plane tickets. Just come to Florida. Just come down here with your daughter, Natalie, and everything, we'll be fine. Just come to Florida. And I was Mom, I'm here. I'm home. I need to stay home. What are we in Florida? I was I need to stay home. I need to stay in the Springs, where there's so much love here, and there's so much richness, and we're so easily open to each other, because a lot of us are wayward Midwesterners or Texan expatriates, or people from California who took a wrong turn on the San Bernardino Highway. And I ended up in Colorado. What was I doing here? And I thought, this is such a rich community. And I didn't tell her all that stuff. She didn't want to feel bad, like, Mom, people here are way better than you. I wouldn't say that to her. But I did say, I thought in my head, I said, Mom, I thought, there is no love there. There's love here. This is where the love is. So thank you. Thank you for having some communion with me. I think that word is precious because I was raised Catholic and it meant the body and blood of Christ. And although I don't think those things anymore, I don't know if I ever did really, but it's just a bizarre thing. Like, this doesn't taste like blood. But I love that the root of that is community, and it's that same thing, and it's so sacred to me here, even that we've been able to share some time together now. Thank you.